Welcome to Innovation and Leadership. I'm Jess Larson. Today on the show, we are on part 2 of our interview with John Fernandez.
Other things simultaneously as well, but they've learned that this isn't something that you can take let's just throw some 22-year-old kid, have him write a 1,500-word blog post, make sure to get this keyword in there a couple of times. If it's that easy, anybody could do it. The things that are valuable are hard. The reason why that there's a lot of
if you didn't listen to part 1 and everything that's going on at Contently, please go back and listen to that. John, I really want to double down on this idea of I feel like there's something you brought up in the first episode that I need to internalize further because, this has got to be, I don't know, episode 250 I've recorded or something. I don't know, right? And so we certainly can get stuck in the patting ourselves on the back for more content. And instead of really holding our feet to the flames on, is this show of the quality it could be? Are we really pushing to get the guests that really have something to teach our clients? But it goes back to that thing you said in the first episode about, I felt like you were saying you can win trust from your potential customers by empathetically thinking about what's going on in their life and really truly teaching them something of value. Am I saying that right? Or how would you say it different?
You're spot on, Jess.
Okay. So in your mind, who are some examples of people that do that well?
Ooh, that definitely puts me on the spot. I think of...
Can I tell you the two that I thought of when you were saying that, and then maybe you can riff off of it? I was thinking of there's a guy named Marcus Sheridan that has this in-ground pool website in Richmond, Virginia. Okay, and he was going bankrupt in 2008, and he just started answering every question anybody has ever had in a sales meeting, even the stuff that nobody in the industry would answer. Right? How much does it cost? What are the negatives of buying our kind versus the other guys? And he would tell on himself and tell the negative things about his stuff. He wrote this book called They Ask You Answer, which feels like the ultimate guide to websites because it's instead of making it a sales brochure, make it a buyer's guide. And I feel like I trust that Marcus guy because he helped me so much in a $15 book that he probably could have charged me thousands of consulting and I would have paid it, Or Neil Patel, the guy from Crazy Egg and all those, his articles are so long and in depth. He's trying to teach you how to do it without him. Literally, this is free. Let me try and help you do this without me. Not a little bit, a lot. Any thoughts about either of those two or anybody that brings to mind?
No, I mean, certainly Neil, very well known. I mean, I think that definitely helped me in terms of my answer because what you find is the people that are actually getting real traction are the people that are willing to answer the questions that are on everybody else's mind, but that everybody is just sort of too afraid to ask, right? I think of kind of Katie Martell, who talks about kind of being an unapologetic marketing truth teller, right? It's and so much of what she's kind of written that's really strong is just, she says something that everybody in the room is thinking, but is just too scared to say.
I don't know her. What's her website or what's her company? What's her?
So she's been around. I think she's sort of on her own consulting now. She's in the Boston area. She's very heavily involved in kind of the Boston content community.
And you said it's Katie Martell?
Martell, yeah. Martell.
What's an example of what she'll say or do? Or
I mean, she's produced a sort of self-published newsletter, where she's just kind of giving honest takes from someone who's been in a marketing role. She's had CMO roles before, and just kind of says she just comes from a place of everybody in the room was oh yeah, I thought I was going to say that. Certainly a lot of stuff in the market now about Adobe Marketo acquisition. Her first reaction is yeah, great for the business, but I'm scared Marketo is going to become more expensive, and so sort of my first reaction as well. And so just the ability to say sort of speak your truth. If you do that in the right way, it's really good. Obviously, folks like Lee Odden, someone who I think has just been around for, probably as long as I have, but who's always written really great content because and I think back to that empathy point is he lives it. He lives it every day. He's got a company where he's supporting a lot of brilliant brands, and just saying the kind of public thing of we don't want to look dumb. We don't want to say that we don't know. There's so much pressure to be I know everything. And so the people have come out and said, I don't think I know what's going on here with 100% certainty, but here's what I think is going on. That approach alone is, really, really, really refreshing.
It actually brings up something for me as I think about, we claim that our marketing departments are to bring in more revenue, right? But half the time, as I think about, so we have some ad agencies that are clients of ours who have Fortune 10 clients that sometimes they bring us to, hey, can you guys just come help us on this, big tech firm in Silicon Valley that everybody on this show would know who I'm talking about if I was saying names, right? And you show up and you're like, you start to realize when it's not your own stuff, you can start to become a little more objective and ask yourself, am I doing the same thing as these people? Because these people are partially talking about getting more clients, and then they're a lot talking about how cool am I that I made this marketing program? How does this content reflect on what people are going to think of me, instead of that true empathy, how having the first question, really, how valuable is this to the people who are going to read it? It's how good is this going to make me look? How is this going to position us that we're making something like this? More so than how valuable is this to the person I'm making it for. And I think it's easier to spot it in other people and give myself a pass instead of ask myself the hard question on, is this about, ooh, I've got someone cool on the show from Goldman Sachs? Or is this, hey, I know this person has something that is so valuable, I want to learn from it, so I think our listeners would want to learn from it.
Well, it's very human to not want to be self-critical. It's very human to want to pat yourself on the back and say, hey, you're doing the best job you can, everything's okay. But marketing, just stepping back for a second, marketing's gotten so brutally difficult in the past 20 years, right? Think of all of the things that marketing has gotten stuck with. The old Gartner line, I remember when it first came out, 6-7 years ago of, the CMO is going to spend more money than the CIO on technology in 2017. Well, first of all, that was last year. And secondly, I think a lot of companies passed that well before then. And so marketing's in this terrible spot where on the one hand, you've got to be the most creative person in the room. You now have to be the most technical person in the room. And every single year in the marketing industry, we have something new that you have to do. Right? I remember when it was paid search. I remember when it was email marketing. I remember when it was predictive scoring. I remember when it was social media marketing. Every single year something comes out. This year it's kind of ABM, right? And something comes out and you have to do it. And you also have to do every single thing that came up before. The only exception I can find is Second Life. There was that one year where everybody had to be on Second Life, and that's the only thing that seems that marketers don't have to do anymore. It's really, really tough. And at the same time, our prospects have so much information overload. You could consume all the knowledge on the planet very easily, 50, 100 years ago. Now I could probably just consume, 24/7 just content about my favorite soccer team, Real Madrid, on just Twitter. There's enough content for that's being created. So that's kind of made the task I don't want to say totally impossible, but really, really very difficult. And that's one where it's having some empathy. We have to have some empathy for ourselves as marketers as well. Is there's so much data. There's so many other folks trying to break through. I mean, look at the MarTech stack. When Scott Brinker started first producing this, I remember when it got to 1,500 companies or so, when I said, this is the most idiotic thing I've ever seen with so many different tech vendors that probably all actually would help me, but I will never have the budget or the people to implement it. And now it's at 6,000, 7,000? It's really, really tough. We just have to sit there and say, this is incredibly difficult. I think the biggest management lesson I ever learned was actually not in kind of my business professional setting, but I taught chess to kindergartners for 6 years. And the first ever
Will you back up for anybody who missed the first episode that, this is a former professional chess player teaching it to kindergartners. Okay, go on.
So it was good use of my time. But these were pretty wealthy kindergartners, really exclusive schools here in New York City and Manhattan. And I was terrified my first day teaching. And so I found really healthy cookies. I think they were the Paul Newman Numinos. And said, all right, I'm going to win these kids over day one, bring them cookies. And it worked perfectly. And so they had some cookies, they learned some chess, they sat down, parents walked in and saw their kids actually sitting down, paying attention to me as I sort of showed a position. They're playing someone who's not their best friend. Like, I thought I was on top of the world. Next week, come back for the second lesson. One kid said it to me the second I showed up. Where's the cookies? The cookies had become table stakes, right? So I cannot impress them with cookies anymore, right? So I just brought the cookies. It was the same cookies you brought last time. Okay, great. It's a cookie. I'll have it. Like, it's not heartbreaking, but it's just a cookie. But taking it away seems like it's just this horrible thing. And businesses like that, like everything. I find that this analogy works so well for so many things in businesses. You have to sit there and go, people may not even love it. Actually, one of the kids was like, "Oh, I hate Numinos," but happily like asked me for a second. They're comfortable with what they are familiar with, and so you see that in businesses, especially if they're creating, if they have a blog that's like creating mediocre content, it has okay engagement, it still feels like cookies taken away if I ask them to change that. Right, okay. Even if I'm giving them something better.
Yeah, I love this. Okay, we're going to talk about this because I feel like you guys are a great brand to talk about less but better. Let's take a quick break from our sponsor. Have a listen, everybody. Okay, John, before the sponsor break, we talked about this idea of less than better. I feel like you guys are a great mascot for less but better. And I think your analogy about the cookies and the kindergarten kids and the like, well, we've been on Foursquare forever. We can't just let it go, right? Or whatever social media marketing is not posting the numbers, right? You think about like the courage to say no to things in order to say yes to the right thing. There's like all those great quotes from Warren Buffett about like the key to really doing great is saying no to almost everything. And yet there's like such peer pressure in marketing to say yes to almost everything.
It's brutal. Everybody says you should say no, but like gun pointed at people's heads, they say yes to everything, and it's very difficult. It's so much more important to say what you're not going to do than what you are going to do. I mean, it just creates this world where you just kind of have these infinite asks, right? I'm just going to keep saying, do this, do this, do this. And look, we all have, whether it's bosses or clients, everybody wants more. Again, it's always more, better, faster, cheaper, and more is always the first one of those. It's very difficult to say, no, I'm not going to give you this. I'm going to give you this other thing instead that's actually more valuable.
You know what, though? I'm thinking about this as you're saying that. And, like, you guys are obviously – you are the top of the content marketing heap in so many ways. And yet, taking the time away, I'm thinking about Shane's book. If people don't know, Shane Snow, one of the co-founders of Contently, wrote this book called Smart Cuts. It's really great. Can't recommend it enough. But you think about that is not just a collection of social media posts. Like, that is real time and effort, that book. And I'm just assuming because so many people I know are completely in love with that book, I'm assuming that book has done a lot of good for Contently. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I mean, Smart Cuts and actually Shane's recent one, Dream Teams, and the one we also produced, the other Storytelling Edge. Shane's brilliant because he thinks this way, because he actually wants to just tell great stories. It's amazing how well that works when you come from that place in his mind.
But it's not just some book. Like people can get a ghostwriter and crank out a book, right? Like it's like he had to say no to a lot of things to get a book of that quality. You don't get a book of that quality by a few thoughts over to the ghostwriter and pump it out.
Yeah, but it's again, it's that hard work can be difficult, right? You think of the work that goes into some of the content. I've seen some of our customers who will literally spend weeks, if not months, on one really good piece. I mean, obviously they're doing other things simultaneously as well, but they've learned that like this isn't something that you can take let's just throw some 22-year-old kid, have them write a 1,500-word blog post, make sure to get this keyword in there a couple times. If it's that easy, anybody could do it. The things that are valuable are hard. The reason why that there's a lot of folks, especially with journalism backgrounds, understands that the craft of creating a good story is very difficult, and it's one thing that I probably didn't have that much of an appreciation of it before I came to Contently as I do now, because I don't have a journalism background. I've never seen what it goes into to write something the way that Shane or Joe Lazauskas or Jordan Teicher, who's our editor-in-chief of The Content Strategist, goes into for was like a blog post. And I've been at the companies where those things didn't have that much thought that went into them. And it wasn't until I kind of saw both worlds that I was able to say, I actually kind of get why these results are different, right? I get why that sort of sloppily put together blog post didn't resonate, while the ones that we spend a lot of time on that actually really have a thoughtful message to say, that are well researched, where you craft the wording in such a way that you tell.
You're probably really story. Teaching someone, like you said, right?
There's a reason like people go to journalism school. There's people study writing enormously because it's really hard. And those people, you can really win, but again, it's just such a hard discipline to really instill on folks.
Okay, and I know we're running out of time in the episode, but I feel like this is also a little bit of the key to why you guys have such a great company, and we're excited to have you on the show. It's like it feels cheap to have your 21-year-old intern do it, but if they post 52 posts or 150 posts this year that don't get engagement versus ponying up the dollars to work with somebody like you guys and actually get somebody from the Wall Street Journal to moonlight and write this thing for us that gets us engagement, you have 149 less posts, but you might have 300% of the leads or value, Well, okay. So besides coming to Contently, maybe getting the new white paper on the content maturity model, where can people connect with you on social?
Jay Fernandez in most places, including Twitter. And obviously Contently is just Contently in pretty much everywhere on social media.
Okay. So my final question here is, in this space with kind of the unique perspective that you're bringing to it, you're not just one of the art kids, right? What is a question, as you think about somebody like me, somebody like Mylan, our firm, or other folks in this kind of position trying to grow this space, you think about the next couple of years, what in your mind is one of the key things to focus on that maybe isn't as obvious to everyone?
I think it's focus. It's really saying no to, a lot of things that look like they're tempting, but finding out what's going to work for you. At the end of the day, the winner is going to be the person that understands their personas, their buyers' journeys, and figures out how to be with them wherever they are. That could be digitally, it could be offline, right? And so you just put yourself in their shoes and say, what are they thinking? Who do they look up to? Who are they reading? Whose content are they consuming, right? Some of those personas are listening to this podcast, right? Because they want to learn how to innovate better. They want to learn how to be better leaders, right? And so figuring out what all those are and getting rid of your sort of predisposed notions of this has always worked before, this is what I've been told I should work, but more saying, does that resonate with my understanding of that person? Is that what this person would think is valuable to them? And if the answer is yes, by all means do it. If the answer is no, not really, have the courage in your understanding of that persona to say, no, this doesn't resonate with the people we're talking to. It's nice to have, but it's not really critical. And so if you can focus on those things well, you'll find that it works. And generally, hey, in business, this is all about getting resources. You find that stuff and that's core to your persona that works well, you'll get the resources to do some of the other stuff that's nice to have.
Okay, I'm just laughing because it's funny how we know the simple answers, but we don't do them, right? Like, so we had Joe Paluzzi, founder of Content Marketing Institute, on. Same thing he told me. Get super, super intense about the first customer you're going to sell to, not generally, but know everything about them individually. You read everything about innovation from Clayton Christensen and the Jobs to be Done stuff, and it's all about like deep empathy, get super dialed into them. Everything from IDEO and the D School at Stanford, I went there and took classes, and it's like deeply observing and watching what they actually do instead of what they say. And yet, the idea of personas, who in the marketing world, what CEO that even has a marketing professional work for them hasn't heard about personas, and somebody's supposed to do personas. But as you say that, I think, you know what? For supposedly pretending I know something about this business and owning a media company, I can't say that our two more personas that we talk about are even written down. Like, we talk about them, our two biggest personas. They're not even written down. And it's funny that I'm talking to like world-class experts, but not actually taking their advice. So I appreciate you doubling down once again on the important thing. And I think I better actually like go do it for a change.
Look, we all do. We can always do it better.
I love it. Hey, thanks for spending so much time with us here today. This has been great.
Thank you, Jess.
Okay. Well, that's it for the episode. One other thing I wanted to tell you about, if you remember the guys from Convoy in episodes back, Ken Free and Trent Mano, I went on one of their CEO trips to New York, and I met a guy named Brent Thompson, very successful entrepreneur. He was former CEO of Jive Communications, big company now, I think $300 or $400 million. Anyways, he started a new company called blipbillboards.com. I'm super stoked they're a sponsor now. But I remember a year and some ago when I met him, I thought it was genius. Instead of having to buy 6 months or a year's worth of billboard for thousands of dollars, you can buy 8 seconds at a time for like 10 or 20 cents. You pick what billboard you want it on, what time of day you want it to run. And it just puts so much power in the hands of marketers and CEOs who want to try something and see if it works. You can buy as many or as few as you want, change it as many times as you want. I think now our podcast is being advertised on billboards in like 18 different states because we have these guys as sponsors. We're pretty excited about it. Hope you check out blipbillboards.com. Thanks.